The pulpit is a stand or platform from which the minister of the church addresses the people. It may be many meters from the ground, highly elaborate and made of stone, with a curved flight of steps. In some churches, the simple stand that is used as a lectern for the reading of the Bible is used as a pulpit. From the pulpit, the minister of the church preaches to the people. The word preach means to proclaim, and in the pulpit the minister proclaims the good news of the faith and encourages people to think about the readings from the Bible they've heard. The talk given by the preacher is sometimes called a sermon or a homily. The word sermon comes from a word meaning to talk. Homily from a word meaning to have a conversation. This seems rather strange, since the preacher may do all the talking while the people listen in silence. The best sermons, however, even if they are monologues, should converse with the stories in the Bible and with the things that have been said by Christians in the past and things going on in the world. The preacher will encourage people in the church to have a conversation with themselves and their own thoughts and ideas, and to talk to one another about the issues raised in the sermon. And a preacher will teach the people about Christianity. Now, just as church buildings and church forms of worship differ hugely, so Christian beliefs vary. As contemporary churches are very different from medieval churches, so the beliefs held by Christians today are very often different from the beliefs of medieval Christian. Here is an example. In medieval English churches, there were paintings on the church walls, and some of these depicted in graphic and terrifying detail the plight of the unfaithful as they are pitchforked into hell. Preachers at the time would warn their people of the dangers of falling prey to the devil. There are Christians today who think all this is an ever-present danger. But just as the wall paintings have been painted over, so today many preachers hardly ever use the word hell in their sermons. Another example, there are Christians who think the universe and everything in it was made by God in 7 days, exactly as described in the creation story, in the book of Genesis at the beginning of the Bible. Others think that Charles Darwin was nearer the truth with his evolutionary ideas. Some Christians hold these beliefs with great passion and will argue fiercely with Christians who hold opposing views. Sometimes they are so convinced of the truth of their arguments that they will say that those who do not share their convictions have no right to call themselves Christians. Now, many people think that religious belief is thinking that certain things are true. So to be a Christian, you have to be able to answer yes to a number of questions. Do you believe in God? Do you think it's true that God exists? Do you believe Jesus is the Son of God? Do you think that's true? Do you believe in the virgin birth? I don't think that is what believing is all about. The word belief comes from 2 words, be and lief. Be means to live, to have a presence in the world. Lief comes from an Old English word meaning to love and means lovingly or gladly or willingly. So belief is about living lovingly and gladly. How to live more gladly and lovingly. Of course, non-Christians as well as Christians will ask these questions. What is distinctive about Christians is that they use the resources of their tradition, their services of worship, their Holy Bible, and the history of their community to find inspiration to live more lovingly and gladly. Christians, in the light of the Bible stories, reflect on the world we live in, resolve to do better, to be more generous and hospitable, and to help bring about greater justice, peace, and happiness. Whatever Christians think is true, and whatever they do and say in their churches, if they're not engaged in that conversation, they certainly aren't followers of Jesus. And what does the preacher teach about God? Will the preacher proclaim what God is like, what God is doing and is wanting the church to do? The word God is not as straightforward a word as people think. St. Aquinas, for example, who lived in the 13th century, said God was not like other things that exist. It was no use travelling around the universe and beyond looking for something called God. God, he said, was not another thing that existed, but existence itself. So according to Aquinas, the question, does God exist, makes no sense. Does existence exist? St. Paul, whose letters appear in the Bible in the New Testament, said, God is that in which we live and move and have our being. Again, it doesn't make a lot of sense to ask whether what we live and move in exists. From this perspective, the question of God becomes an exploration of life and of love. To believe in God is to make the most of life, to accept life with all its ups and downs and fragility. The preacher will encourage the people to face hardship without resentment and to bring comfort and relief to those who are suffering.